Welcome to the Young Entrepreneur's Journey with your host, Yasmina Ellins.
Welcome to the Young Entrepreneur's Journey, where we take the skills, mindset, and attitude needed to achieve any entrepreneurial endeavor, whether you're just starting out or you're already on your journey. And now, our host, Yasmina Ellins.
Hello and welcome back to the Young Entrepreneur's Journey podcast with your host, Yasmina Ellins. Now, today I have the absolute pleasure of chatting with amazing young entrepreneur, Milimo Banji, also known as Mills, who is the founder of leading social-first creative agency TapIn. He founded TapIn after dropping out of his aerospace engineering degree because he couldn't ignore his calling to disrupt the early careers space and make a positive impact on the lives of other young people like himself. TapIn's mission is to prepare 100 million young people for the world of work. Now, TapIn won RAF Engineering, which to people who don't know what that is, Royal Air Force Engineering, as one of its first clients before Mills even hired any team members. And less than 2 years later, TapIn's team has quadrupled and has had the pleasure of working with a whole host of other graduate employers, including BT, Capgemini, UBS, News in Europe, and EY, who also want to transform the way in which they attract and engage Gen Z talent in the social media age that we now live in. TapIn does this by creating the type of content that they know Gen Z are looking for. That's relatable, shareable, and most importantly, valuable. It's the kind of content that positions your employer brand not only at the top of their minds, but also in their hearts. Now, Mills is a really smart cookie, especially because he's been consuming a lot of Jim Quick lately. And he's done a ton of placements at big name companies such as Google, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley and McKinsey, just to name a few. And as an entrepreneur, Mills is a force of energy with a bright future ahead of him and has several hotshot mentors supporting him on his journey. Now, by the end of this interview, you will have a strong understanding of how to create a powerful brand. You'll gain insight into how you can build a deep connection with the Gen Z audience, and you will feel that you too can reach into the hearts and minds of your target market. With that said, thank you so much for coming on today, Mills. I'm really excited.
Yasmina, honestly, I was just in awe. I have never had anyone introduce me like that. I feel so important. I feel so important. Like when you listen to your introduction, sometimes it just begs the question. You're like, oh, have I done all of these things? And when you hear somebody speak it just feels so good. So no, thank you so much for the introduction and a real pleasure to actually be part of the podcast. Amazing.
I'm super excited. Yeah, it's my job to make you feel really important and cool. So you can tell me all of your secrets. So hey. So my first question for you, Mills, is what originally got you onto your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, that's a good question, actually. That's a very good question. I think when I think back at how I kind of got into entrepreneurship, for me, I think back to how I was raised. You know, I initially think back to how I was brought up. I was brought up in Zambia. So I grew up in Zambia. In fact, I grew up in a place called Highlands. It was this really cool kind of farm, a piece of land that was parallel to an international airport. So I kind of grew up seeing all these aircrafts taking off and kind of landing all the time. And my parents were quite hardworking. You know, my parents my mum had, what would I call it? She had a garden, but she had so many different fruits and veg. You had carrots in there. You had all the different kinds of vegetables, collard greens. You had onions. You had everything in there. And I saw her really take that garden and build that into a business. So she would sell that to get the produce, and she would sell that at the local market. And it was just incredible to see that. And I know I was helping out with the planting of the seeds. We'd go into the garden, would plant the maize, would harvest it. So I saw that growing up, and I began to see, you know, entrepreneurship or the early inceptive stages of entrepreneurship when I was quite young. And I think as I kind of grew, I began to really understand entrepreneurship. But I'd say, I think the early inceptions for me were actually watching my mother, you know, build that garden in the backyard and turn that into a business. And I think that was when the first inceptive ideas for entrepreneurship actually came up for me.
That's pretty incredible that you got to see her from such a young age and you got to see this cute little innocent garden and then you could see it grow and flourish and develop into that business. That's really cool that you're exposed to that.
Yeah,
and
yeah, no, I was gonna say it was so incredible because like what I saw was just not it wasn't normal. My friends and their families had like typical jobs. They would obviously be working a typical kind of 9-to-5 job. My mum was actually doing that as well as the kind of gardening business on the side. And actually, she then developed that further into doing some baking. So she would bake really, really, like in Zambia, we have these pies, these meat pies. I to this day, if anybody brings me a meat pie, Yasmina, that's that's the key to my heart. So she would make these really cool meat pies and she would sell them at the market. But it all started off by that garden, which then grew into a bakery business. But just seeing her go through the early inceptive stages of entrepreneurship was just brilliant for me.
That's pretty incredible. It's exciting because in an entrepreneur, you get to see something start from the ground up and you get to see and build and watch something grow. I'm really curious. So you went to study aerospace engineering because you're really smart. And what was then the trigger for you to decide, okay, this is cool, but I want to be an entrepreneur?
I think that's it's one of those things that I've always been thinking about. I know in my first year, I think to answer this question, we have to kind of understand why I went into doing aerospace engineering in the first place. I mentioned obviously I lived on this farm that was parallel to this international airport. So for me, that passion for aerospace came from seeing aircrafts kind of take off and land pretty much every single day. And I thought to myself, how do these massive objects, these mechanical marvels, how do they stay up in the air? And I was like, what, 9, 10? And I was asking myself those questions. And then I went to university and actually studied aerospace. But I think within 6 months, I kind of got the answer to that. You learn about Bernoulli's, you understand Bernoulli's law, and you understand the principles, the physical principles that govern flight. Then after that, I was kind of like, great, I get it now. I know how these, airplanes stay up in the air. What next? And then I don't know if you remember, but Amazon a couple of years ago were thinking about using drones for their delivery service, right? They were thinking about using drones for delivery service. And I was doing aerospace, but I also love drones. I was a drone hobbyist. So what I would do is I would go on eBay and I'd buy all the constituent parts, for the drone. I'd buy the propeller, I'd buy the motor, I'd buy the all of the components that essentially create and allow us to actually build a drone. And I'll be building that on the side. So when I saw Amazon do the whole delivery system and I knew I was doing drones, I was like, great, Amazon is trying to use that for parcels. Perhaps I could use that for advertising. And I had this whole crazy idea of using drones to create this whole new immersive advertising experience. And actually, I managed to actually launch a business, which I'll run for about, a year and a half, 2 years. And that's kind of for me when I thought, actually, I love aerospace, but this new idea, this drone idea, I love this so much. And then I ended up going into like the early inceptive stages of marketing and out of home, outdoor advertising with droning. And then I think that was for me that stage where I was able to move away from doing my degree and start to actually move a lot closer into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's so funky to hear how that transition, right? You had a skill, you were super excited to learn about it. And it's interesting because that's the nature of the entrepreneur, right? If you're a serial entrepreneur, you're like, let me build this thing, let me make it really awesome. Now that I've learned about it, okay, let me learn about something else now. So some people stick with the planes for the rest of their lives. And you were kind of like, okay, well, I kind of figured out how they fly now. Now I want to fly to something else, which is really awesome. So I'm wondering with droning, what was it like building that up from the ground? What was that like? Was it difficult? Were there struggles? Did you know anything about entrepreneurship? What was that journey like for you?
I knew nothing. First of all, I knew absolutely nothing about I knew nothing about business. my expertise lay on the engineering side of things, the drones, how to build those. I knew nothing about taking that hobbyist concept and turning that into a business. I knew absolutely nothing about that. And what I did was, in university, you have your entrepreneurial societies, and at University of Manchester, we had the Manchester Entrepreneurs, they were called. And every March, they had this conference, which they called What Next, which was budding entrepreneurs or budding individuals that had really cool ideas. They'll go to this conference, and at this conference, you'd have lots of speakers and you'd have all these kind of different individuals there, and they'll teach you essentially about entrepreneurship, and they'll share their own journeys, right? They'll share their own experiences, their journeys on entrepreneurship. And I attended that. And I think for me, that was the first opportunity where I actually got to hear entrepreneurs firsthand, understood some of the concepts of building a business, understanding things like, building your business plan and the elements of business plan and the importance of that, the importance of research and market research and understanding your audience and bringing all of that together. And I think after that, I then thought, actually, I don't know anything about business or entrepreneurship, but this has given me at least the stepping stones, giving me the fundamentals I need to start. And I think within about a week of that event, I just put my head down and I wrote something like a 30-page kind of business plan, which is kind of run through all the kind of details of that first business. And then, I was there. I had an idea, and then I had a 30-page business plan, and I was thinking, what next?
Yeah, you're like, okay, now I have the plan. What are the steps, right? What are the steps? Yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear, because so many people are afraid to take that first step because they think, well, I don't know the solution. I don't know how to do this. And something that they don't take the first step. What I find is really exciting about people who are entrepreneurial is they're like, well, I don't need to know the outcome. I follow the journey, right? And I take that step, and then I take the next step, and then I make a mistake, and then I learn something, and then I try again, and then I fail here, then I learn something, then I try again, then I succeed, then I get a mentor. The mentor tells me what to do. And instead of thinking, I need to know the goal and I need to know how to reach every step of the goal so I can achieve it, they think really, really big. You're like, I'm just going to create this drone marketing advertising company, right? And you just have this like crazy idea, and you're like, well, I don't need to know all the steps. I'm just going to take the first step, which is really, really exciting.
Exactly. And it really brings me back to one of the key concepts of a book that I read before, and it's called the Lean Startup. And it talks about this, build, measure, learn cycle, where as a startup, you're not taking time to go away and build this perfect product, build it and they will come, it's really moving away from that. And I know sometimes when people start businesses or when entrepreneurship or when entrepreneurs go into business, they're thinking about building the perfect product, thinking about what's the perfect product that we can go to market with that everyone's going to love. But actually, the Lean Startup talks about, this whole concept of building, learning, and then measuring. So build a product, but constantly be learning, constantly be iterating, changing that product, go to market, get lots of feedback from your consumers, from your audience, and then learn from that and then continue that loop, and that tends to be the structure that the most successful startups actually have implemented. And without knowing it, actually, that was something that I was doing in my first business and also in my second business right now. It was like I was constantly just going out there. And like you said, actually, I didn't know what the end goal was. I had no idea what we were going to build, but I knew that actually what I can do is I can begin something and then iterate consistently until I get to a position where, what we're building makes sense and it's actually got a good product market fit.
Yeah, 100%. With the Lean Startup, right? It's about, let me just go test. Let me interview a bunch of people. Let me observe people in random aisles in the supermarket to observe their shopping behavior and just literally being so out in the field. I think it's really interesting when people get so married. It's a problem when people get so married to like, here's my idea and here's a solution. Yeah. And if you think that way, then, well, what if there isn't actually a market for it? Or what if there isn't a need? What if it doesn't solve the problem? And when you do the lean way or the design thinking approach,
Mm.
then you're like, okay, well, let me just build something that really works and really fulfills a need.
100%. And I think one of the barriers that stops a lot of founders or entrepreneurs or a lot of entrepreneurs from doing quite well or for actually launching businesses is exactly that fear. It's a fear that actually, when I do build something, the audience might not come, but actually when you're building something, you should constantly be testing, constantly be going out to market, constantly be collecting information and data to validate your hypothesis. Because once you have that data, you're then able to build a product that not just your audience wants, but you have to understand that audiences are constantly changing. Startups target audiences constantly changing depending on market forces and the kind of systems and environments that they're actually in. So when you launch a business, it's so important to just be out there testing your product, speaking to the audience, and just ensuring that the data that you're actually capturing makes sense and allows you to justify and validate those hypotheses.
100%. I think it's really cool because you stayed in the marketing space. You went from drones to helping employers and brands connect with Gen Z audiences, which I think is really, really cool. What got you onto that? How did that become your mission and your new inspiration?
Yeah, it's so interesting because after launching Drone In, which was, for context, it was this crazy idea which I had, which I wanted to use drones as a means of advertising. I pretty much wanted to have a drone flying on every street, every corner with, it sounds like we're in 2040, but it was absolutely ridiculous. So it was like having these drones flying by on roads, with these banners or digital ads, I'd call them. And the whole idea was to create this very immersive advertising experience where the user is actively immersed with adverts. So rather than seeing an ad or seeing several ads and then, remembering that actually I saw this ad earlier on, let me make the purchase now, it was actually about getting consumers to purchase or to make purchasing decisions immediately. So you'd see a drone, it might say you've got 70% off ASOS, so the moment you connect to the drone, you get that code to get 70% off ASOS immediately. And I think I went from doing that to then thinking, actually, this is great. But then things like legislation come in the way and bureaucracy comes in the way. And then, at the time, drones were not really regulated. And it was a very difficult space to kind of operate in. And, I had conversations with the CAA, so the Civil Aviation Authority, and they came and said, Mills, we love the concept. We love the idea. But at the time, the legislation just didn't exist to really facilitate the use of drones in civilian crowded areas. So what we ended up doing was we tried to pivot it into a platform, a marketplace where you can go onto there, you can hire a drone operator if you needed a surveyor for agriculture or for video production or for your property videos or anything. But that didn't work as well. So after a year and a half, I just kind of said, actually, this isn't working. And I think we realized that this wasn't going to work. And that's when the internships came in. And then I had the opportunity to kind of intern at the likes of kind of Google. I was at, JP Morgan and BP and all these companies. And what that gave me was just a contrast, a difference, So I had spent some time already building businesses and building my first business, Drone In, and seeing how much I enjoyed that and how much flexibility and freedom I had with that. And then on the other hand, we then had internships where I was working within an organization, and I was exposed to very, very different market forces, different individuals. And what I realized quite quickly was that structure wasn't one that I was very suited to. I tend to describe myself as somebody who's got lots of ideas. I liked to see a problem and really think about how that can be changed and action that pretty quickly. But working in these corporates, it was like I would identify something and it would go back and forth. I'd be actively involved in the change process, but it would take me months just to have a conversation. And then that conversation takes me a step back. And then I go through another hoop and it takes... So I realized very quickly that if I wanted to enact change on a national, on a global level, what I really, really had to do was to really think about how I can be the initiator of that change. And I think it wasn't clear when I was doing the internship what that would look like. What we're currently doing today with TapIn was not clear at all when I was doing the internships. But when I did come out of those internships, I went back on campus and people were asking me, Mills, how did you get Google? Like, how did you get into JP Morgan? You're doing aerospace engineering. And these were my peers. These were, aerospace engineering students, perhaps some of the most, obviously, most smartest or most intelligent people on at university. And they would ask me these questions. Mills, how did you get these internships? And I would have these small sessions, Yasmina, where I would talk to them for like 10 minutes and be like, this is what you need to do for your CV and your cover letter and interviews and so on. And then that's what then grew into TapIn. But essentially it was almost like an accident, but I guess realizing that there was a need for what we are producing, which is supporting young people with careers. There was such a need for that because what existed at the time was your forums. I'm sure you remember Student Room at university.
Yeah.
We'd all go in Student Room, we'd spend so much, we'd ask questions after an exam. That was a place everybody went to get those answers. But I thought actually there has to be a new way of being able to engage with young people. Forums, blogs and articles they sit as an archaic way of engaging with young people. And I saw that actually there was an opportunity here with social media and all the different social channels to really engage with young people, particularly with providing them with careers information.
It's really awesome to hear your journey from drone in to the internships to TapIn. And I definitely want to dive into that engagement with the Gen Z audience. But before I do that, I have to ask about all those internships, right? And I'm going to ask you what the people asked you when you came back to the campus of Mills. How did you get all those? Because I think a lot of young people are confused, right? And I even think for entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs and entrepreneurial people, some really want to go to one of these big companies so that they can work around the smartest people and really learn a skill set, right? And so I'd be really curious to know what is the top piece of advice or the top few pieces of advice that you can give to someone who's going up for those kinds of big companies?
Yeah, 100%. I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is to really be unique, number one. But I think also really be self-aware and understand where your value actually lies and be honest with yourself about that. What I did for myself was I would approach people on LinkedIn, and I would also go to tons of these campus events and really speak to people, meet them in person, because I understood that actually the reason why companies come on campus is because they actually want to speak to students and actually see the talent before they actually can work there. So I'd make sure that I was going out there, I was speaking, I was going to networking events, I was speaking to a ton of different people and really understanding them, investing time in them, building those key relationships with them, jumping on coffees with them. But I think what also helped was my academics and my academic background was quite good, which meant that actually when I did apply, I had already qualified. But I think academics on their own aren't enough. When it comes to landing a job, I think everybody now gets the academic side of things. Everybody will get their A's and A stars. Everybody will do the extracurricular things. But it's about how can you take that a step further and build relationships? How can you really build genuine relationships with people and begin to actually show them something that most people won't, which is take them, if it means jumping on a Zoom call with somebody and having that one-to-one to really get to know them. If it means going for a coffee, I know things are opening up now, going for a coffee with them. And I think differentiate yourself. And then I think being self-aware, like I said, and being aware of where your strengths really lie. What value can you really bring, not just to that organization, but to that individual who you've connected with, and then leveraging that to really build your way into these organizations. And I think what was also important is really having a real understanding of the spaces that you're going into. So if you're going into banking, understand the space that you're going into. Networking and having good grades isn't gonna cut it when you're working on the sales and trading floor and you've got to do lots of regression models and analysis. You really have to understand the space you're going into as well. But I think once you couple all those together, you've got the right ingredients for success.
Yeah, definitely 100%. I think understanding the space and the tasks and the skills is important because, understanding what you're saying, right, is understanding their reality, understanding the reality of the company, understanding the perspective of the people who work there and the employers, I think is so important, because when you can understand their reality, you can then communicate with them more effectively. When you take the time to build those relationships and take that coffee when most people wouldn't, or proactively seek it out, then they will tell you what they need. And when you know what they need, then you can understand how you can communicate your value to be like, I'm exactly what you need. And then, right? And it's when you build those genuine connections as well, and not just focus on work, but actually build that deep connection, then you never know. They might be in the ear of the person who's hiring and say, yo, this person's really awesome. And that might get you the job. Like, relationships are everything.
I couldn't agree more. I think when you understand that the number one basic need and want from every human is to be loved and appreciated. Every single human being strives to be loved and appreciated. I think even before you think about an internship or you think about any business engagement or clients, how can you first make somebody feel loved and appreciated? Take this podcast as an example. You started this off by giving the most extraordinary of introductions. I have never had anybody introduce me the way you had. And I think that really set the tone for the rest of the conversation. And I think when you do take a little bit of thought to do the research, your background research into somebody, to really understand them, it really does set you apart. Because when you understand the basic intrinsic needs of humans, which is like, every person, strives to be loved and appreciated. When you can work on that and realize that, it absolutely changes your game, and it absolutely changes your perspective and your mindset when you do go into these conversations, and you can really set yourself up for real success.
Definitely super important. I had a genius point, but I forgot it, so I will move on. But everything you said is 100% true.
Like 5 minutes.
I remember it now. As soon as you decide to not think about it, it immediately comes back. I love how the brain works like that. Yeah, I just wanted to say to aspiring entrepreneurs who are listening as well, right? Like, don't think this is just a corporate thing. This is a universal human principle. And maybe there's someone that you really admire who's building a business, maybe someone like Mills, maybe someone else. If you can use those same principles to work under that entrepreneur, to understand, okay, how do you build that business? Okay. And then learn the relevant skills. So it's definitely something that is universal, which is really, really powerful. So coming back to what I was saying earlier before I delved back into that, about connecting with Gen Z audiences, right?
Yeah.
How can companies or entrepreneurs or people in general really connect and engage with the Gen Z generation?
It's a very good question. I think the best place to start is always understanding. I think before any change can be made, or before any strategies or systems can really be implemented, there has to be an understanding piece. There has to be a conservative effort from anyone, if it's an organization or brand or an individual who wants to understand Generation Z. But before you can figure out how to engage with them, you have to first understand them. What I mean by that is, understanding their needs, their wants, the trends, how they think, their behaviors, the kind of platforms that they spend most of their time on, and once you understand that, you can then take that apart and begin to really think about strategies which you can really be implementing to attract and engage Generation Z to anything, to your brand, to your organization, to whatever you're doing. But I think data is so important, and I think that alignment and understanding sits as the central core requisite to success when it comes to Generation Z. And then the second one is then understanding where to find them. Where do you find Generation Z? I've had conversations so many times with organizations that will say, actually, we're running loads of ads on LinkedIn, for example. We're doing lots of work on LinkedIn to find Generation Z. But actually, when you look at LinkedIn, we can only see that there's between 20 and 23% of Generation Z actually spend their time on LinkedIn. So being able to understand where to find them, platforms, What platforms are they on? We know that they're on TikTok. We know that they're on Snapchat. We know that they're on Instagram. When you focus on honing on those three platforms in particular, you can then begin to understand a bit more about the audience. If you look at recent data coming in, I think just about 2 days ago, as of recording 2 days ago, data came in showing that by the end of 2021, actually, TikTok will now have more Gen Z users than Instagram. And in comparison, TikTok is a fairly new platform in comparison to Instagram. And then actually by 2023, TikTok will have more users, more Gen Z users than Snapchat, by 2023, which is absolutely incredible. So I think once you understand the platforms that that Gen Z actually are on, you can then begin to think about your strategy. So the first thing to first do is to understand them, build that understanding of the audience first of all, so you can align your goals to theirs. You can begin to build strategies that are effective, and then second of all, find out exactly what platforms that they actually use. What platforms are they on? And then the third one I'll say is execute. And by execution, I'm talking about how do you reach them? Are you producing content that's on TikTok? Are you producing a Reels content on Instagram, or are you producing an influencer campaign? Are you working with influencers to really engage with them? So once you follow those three kind of stages, would really recommend that, and I'd personally recommend those when it comes to engaging with Generation Z. Once you follow that structure, and you understand the understanding piece, the data collection, and then you can move on to the second piece on understanding the platforms that they're on, and then the execution. Those three sit as a central requisite to success with Generation Z.
100%. I think you can even say that is the formula for engaging any target market that you want to engage, right? Understand them, where they're hanging out, and then execute on the appropriate strategies, which is really, really cool. And so let's say I'm on TikTok now, or I'm on Instagram, on one of these two.
Yeah.
What content have you found that is the most engaging, the most shareable, the most valuable, the kind of content that really connects with the Gen Z audience when I'm on that platform?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the first thing to understand is that these platforms are constantly changing. A year ago, Instagram introduced Reels, which was a borrowed concept from TikTok. Now, Reels is absolutely taken off. So you can see the usage of Reels is just completely shot up. Every single creator now is using Reels. But if you'd asked me the same question a year and a half ago, I'd have said videos. I'd have said, IGTV perhaps, was great, or going live. But I think the one thing to understand, first of all, is that these platforms are constantly evolving. They're constantly changing. These tech companies are introducing new and cool features to really be engaging with this audience. On TikTok, what we tend to find is content that tends to fit in with Gen Z culture. When you look at trends, look at what's happening on TikTok. There will be trends that are on there. There might be a trend on jobs, perhaps. I know right now there's a massive trend around getting a new job, where people are posting lots of really cool, imaginative, creative content on TikTok around getting a new job. But there are tons of these. There are hundreds of these trends on TikTok. And I think for success, study these trends, study what these creators are actually producing, and understand the formula for success, and then try and replicate that. If you're an individual, I'm looking at this from an individual's perspective. You're looking to, produce some content on TikTok, for example, or build a brand or be an influencer. Look at what's already working. Jump on particular hashtags. Sounds are great on TikTok. There are particular sounds that people jump on. And once you understand what those are, jump on those, engage with the audience. And if you're a brand, try and see how you can actually engage on that platform by understanding exactly, like I said before, like the tags, the hashtags again, the sounds, and what's trending. Understand what's trending and what does Gen Z culture on each platform say. The culture on TikTok is very different to the culture on Instagram. The kind of posts that Gen Z are making on Snapchats are very different to posts that they're making on TikTok, and very different to that they're making on Instagram. So I think when we look at all three platforms across, we look at why it's important for us to be on those platforms. And it's because We'll look at things like trends, we'll look at things like hashtags, we'll look at things like the types of content. I think once you understand those, you can then begin to have success with the audience.
Yeah, it's super interesting to hear about how the cultures are all different, right?
Yeah.
I find it so interesting how you can just take you can just take a platform that's like, hey, we connect people, but it does it in different ways, and then because of the nature of the platform, people whole different cultures emerge. I find that so fascinating. I've never thought about it like that before.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like different kind of ecosystems as well. Like you find there are creators who we find who are just on TikTok. You won't find them on Instagram, or they'll post very different content on Instagram. In fact, you wouldn't even think it's the same. You wouldn't even think it's the same creator, because what they're posting on TikTok is completely different, because the landscape there is drastically different to what you have on the platform like Instagram, for example. So they might be going viral. They might be doing really cool, funny videos on TikTok. And they know that the audience there on TikTok love that. And they know that the culture there on TikTok is conducive for their type of content. So they'll stay on there, So beginning to understand those different shifts in culture and what platform brings what is so important.
Definitely. So I'm curious, because you've obviously have several years of marketing, building a marketing agency and with droning and all that kind of stuff. What are some of the most powerful lessons in marketing that you have learned in that time?
It's a very good question. The first thing I would say is the power of marketing to change people's perspectives. I think we as marketers have the power to really change what people think about particular products, services, organizations, people, systems. And I think with that great power comes great responsibility as well. One of the most important things that I've learned is actually that as marketers, we have a responsibility. We have the power to change communities, to change society. But I think there's also a responsibility that we have on our shoulders to ensure that we are doing things ethically. We are running campaigns ethically, and where we're thinking about, for us in particular, we're always thinking about the next generation. We're always thinking about young people. We're always thinking about the impact that what we're doing has on the audiences that we're working with. So I think one of the biggest lessons I would definitely say when it comes to marketing, and one of the biggest lessons I've learned in marketing is that we have a responsibility. We have a duty and a responsibility to be able to operate in ways that are ethical and allow for us to really engage authentically with our audiences.
That's really, really interesting and definitely true, because marketing is applied psychology. And so it's really interesting to see how marketing shapes the world and shapes thoughts and shapes the mind and shapes the amount of advertisements people see every day. I can't remember the exact figure. Maybe you've got a more correct figure, but the last one I remember seeing that the average amount people see a day is something like 3,000. I don't know if that's still accurate, but whatever it was high. It was high. It was around that. So it's pretty crazy. And I think it's really powerful what you say that about responsibility and duty, right? Super fascinating.
It's really interesting because that number at 3,000, some sources say 5,000, some of them say 6,000, but the general consensus here is that we are exposed and we're bombarded with a ton of different types of advertising media. And if you look at a platform like Facebook and you talk about psychology and you talk about the responsibility that we as marketers have, if you look at what Chamath did at Facebook with engagement and building the growth channels at Facebook, they really delve deeper into psychology and human psychology. They really delve deeper into understanding the impact that something like the feed has on people's consumption and their dwell times on platforms. But then if you think about the adverse effects of spending time on Facebook, we've seen lots of young people be affected by things like mental health because they spend a lot of their time on Facebook. They spend a lot of time on Instagram, and if you think about how these platforms are actually built, sometimes they're built with the purpose of keeping those users on the platform, because that's how advertisers actually make their money. If a platform is attractive, you can spend lots of time on there, they're going to make more money because they've got more eyeballs to actually sell that space to, So I think when we understood that, and when I understood that, I really took that back and said, we have a responsibility here as an organization. We have a real ethical responsibility to ensure that what we're doing from a marketing perspective is supporting our audiences. But I think more importantly, it's conducted in a way that provides longevity and supports the audiences that we're looking to engage with.
Mm-hmm. And that at the end of the day, it helps. And it helps more than it hinders. Hopefully it doesn't hinder at all, right? It's super interesting. What you're saying is totally right. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, LinkedIn, maybe not LinkedIn, but like all these social media platforms, they are made to keep you on there. Like the more of your life that you spend on there and not in your life is beneficial to them, right? So it's super interesting how you say that. And I think it's a really fascinating perspective.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I think there's a responsibility here, not just from these tech companies, but I think also from marketers, from marketers alike, to ensure that the way we're running campaigns and the way we're building these channels and kind of growing and working with clients is done in an ethical way.
Totally agree. So I'm curious about you, Mills, right? Some sources tell me that you have a lot of mentors and that you're collecting them like Pokemon, which I think is awesome. And so I would love to hear how have mentors served you in your life, in your business, why are they important, and how have you gone about building those mentor-mentee relationships?
100%. I think, it's so important, first of all, to acknowledge as an individual or as an entrepreneur, to acknowledge, first of all, that you can't do everything on your own. My mum always says, no man is an island. My mum always says to me from a very young age, I never really got it. From a very young age, she'd always say, remember that no man is an island. I thought it was quite funny actually at the time when she was saying it, and I never really got it. But I think as I grew up, I began to really understand what she meant by that. And it's speaking to, the intrinsic human need for support. You can spend time on your own. You can build and you will go fast. But if you can build together and have the collective support of people around you, you can go far. So mentorship for me has been so important, like really, really, really fundamental to my own personal growth and development. But I think also the growth, the scaling of our own business, because what mentorship allows you to do is to tap into people that have had the knowledge and the expertise and have had the time and have failed and have been through the same journey that you've been through. And they can support you through that. But I think, it's not just a one-way stream. It's actually a two-way stream. And something that I began to kind of learn later on was mentorship actually it's a two-way system. You're providing as much support and kind of help and guidance to your mentor as they're doing to you. And I never really understood that. And I thought to myself, look, I'm like, what? I was like 18, 19. Quite young. What can I give to them? But there's so much you can do. If somebody wants to mentor you, try and find ways in which you can help them with what they're doing. Do they need some help with social media? Do they need some help with branding? Do they need some help with copywriting? And try and find a way that you can obviously be able to give back to them. And I think always just appreciate the time, because it is a sacrifice. Appreciate the sacrifice in time that they're actually giving to you. In order for you to kind of grow and develop. Now speaking to mentorship and how I kind of really realized the power of mentorship, that's a very good question, actually, Yasmina. I think for me, it was an interesting kind of story a couple of years ago where I had just pivoted out of my degree and I was looking to do business, kind of to really go into doing business. And I met somebody from a networking event and they were like, Mills, I know somebody who's just, I think they've just sold a business, or I think they've made a massive property purchase or property sale, I beg your pardon. And they were like, this guy has a lot of, capital. You should really approach him because that could be your startup money. So, as I just came out of uni, I was super hungry, super excited. I thought to myself, right, I've got to find this person, all right? I've got to find them. So I called him up. We arranged some time. We met in person. And we met, and he said to me, he was head of sales at one of the big sales companies. I think it was Thomson Reuters, I believe. And he was quite straight up. So we met within the first kind of 3 or 4 minutes. He was like, right, Mills, what do you want from me? So I was kind of there thinking, that is a very ballsy question. And I thought, great, he's coming with that kind of energy. I need to give him the kind of energy back as well. So I was like, I'm looking for £100,000 investment in my business. And he laughed at me. He did. He laughed, and rightfully so. And I was kind of thinking, did I make a joke? is something funny? And he laughed at me and he was like, Mills, look, I can't give you £100,000, right? I can't give you that at this stage. Obviously you're still in the sensitive stages of your business. There's still a lot of work that needs to get done. And he said, what I can give you instead is mentorship. And I kind of froze and I thought, mentorship? That was not what I came here for. I came here for £100,000 investment. But he was quite adamant. He said, Mills, actually, I can give you mentorship and it's going to be really useful for you. I kind of reluctantly accepted. And I went back thinking, I failed. I met an investor and, I didn't quite get him. And I was quite sad. But then he started to mentor me. And then I think within the first year of him mentoring me, we actually made £100,000. And that's when it really struck in my head. And I thought to myself, wow, this is absolutely amazing because, he's equipped me with the skills and the knowledge and expertise that is necessary for me to go out there and be able to build a business and learn what needs to be learned for success. So when I realized that, I thought, actually, I need to find more of these. I need to find more of these. And I know you mentioned about the Pokemons and collecting mentors like Pokemons, which I find quite funny, actually. But I think I'm at the stage now where I think I've got something like between 15 and 20 different mentors that are in different areas that do different things. And I think, as much as I see them as mentors, I always try my best to try and give back to them, as a function of the sacrifice that they've given to me. But I think it's so important to be able to recognize that mentorship is a two-way stream. It's not just an individual who's sacrificing their time and their commitment to you. It's actually thinking about what you can do for them.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I've found with mentors as well is obviously you could try and help them out with a skill, or you can make introductions and stuff like that. But a bizarre and interesting thing is that people who are mentors have usually had a significant amount of success in their life. So now their cup is so full that they're just like, I just want to give. I just want to help the right people out. I just want someone who's young and hungry and help them break through barriers and break through belief and achieve something real. And so what I've found is just being the best possible student you can be and just being there and eager, enthusiastic. Whatever they tell you to do, you do that. Yeah. You do it. Because if you don't do it, then they're like, well, why did I bother? Why did I bother giving my time, my energy? And they feel that sense of warmth, giving that impact, which I think is also a wonderful thing that you can do. If you can show that you're an amazing mentee, then there will be several mentors falling over their feet and excited to actually help you out and help you accomplish your goals, which is also a really awesome thing.
I'll definitely add to that as well and say actually that being part of what makes a really good mentee is your ability to listen. Listening to advice and taking it on board and being accountable for that advice. So if you meet with a mentor and they give you some advice, get it done and then be accountable and say, this is what I've done. Since our last conversation, I've actually been working on this. Be accountable and show them that actually that their investment that they're making in you isn't a wasted one. Actually go back to them and say, look, since our last conversation, I know you spoke about these points and you said I should change this. I've taken that on board. I've implemented this and this is where I currently am. They're now thinking, wow, I spent an hour with this individual a week ago or 2 weeks ago and everything I said was actually noted. They listened to me and they've actually gone and enacted the feedback that I gave them. that will allow them and incentivize them. Probably incentivize is the wrong word, but it will encourage them actually. It would really encourage them to continue supporting you because they know that they're actually being listened to, and you're taking that advice and bringing it to life and actually making it real. And what they will do is that they'll open up their network to you. They'll be more inclined to do even more things for you because they know that that investment or that sacrifice that they're putting in you isn't going to waste.
Definitely. And also in terms of value, I've just been, I nerd out so much about this. I've just been thinking, right? So one of my mentors, really successful, really awesome guy, has literally said he's investing in my business partner and I like a stock, like as if we were a stock. Because when you take someone who is young and hungry and you can see that in your eyes and you think, okay, this person is going somewhere. This person is going to be big. This person is going to be successful. When someone is thinking that, then they're like, okay, well, if I help this person out now, early in their journey, when they become way more successful and really big, then they can help me out. And in the future, they'll invite me to something cool. They'll make a really powerful introduction. Maybe you'll become even more successful than your mentor, right? Which is an extremely powerful thing. So that's another really interesting way to look at it.
I was going to just say, it's really interesting how when you look at billionaires, they spend all of their life making tons of money, right? They spend so much of their life building so much money. And then once they're so rich, they give it away. It's such an interesting concept that they all give. Warren Buffett has given away something like 95% or 99% of his wealth. He's a billionaire. You wouldn't really understand that. But again, it's the concept that you spoke about, which is, you spend so much time accruing lots of value and accolades and wealth, but then you're actually just looking for those people that are hungry. You're looking to, really push that energy and that support that you have to an individual, a young person who is hungry and ready to make a change. And it's just interesting how these multi-billionaires would take their billions and just give them all away, and the rest of the world is kind of thinking, why have they done that?
Yeah, it's funny what you say about Warren Buffett, right? The guy makes me laugh because he's one of the richest people in the world and he's still living in his middle class house. There's like middle class car and like completely like none of the material stuff, right? I find that so fascinating.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm curious to know, Mills, how do you find all your mentors and how do you actually turn someone from just a connection into a mentor and actually build that relationship with them?
So I think the first thing I would say is understanding that if you want the attention of somebody who is very busy, you first of all needs to be patient. If you're looking to have somebody that's a successful entrepreneur or somebody who's quite senior in the business, the one thing you're going to need to understand is that you're probably not the only one reaching out for their attention. They probably have, I always tend to think that there are 20 other people as well as myself or reaching out for their attention. So I think the first requisite I would say is patience, just being able to be patient and understanding that these individuals are busy, you're not top of their mind. But I think what you need to do is be persistent in how you're reaching out to them. I think for a lot of my mentors, this sounds ridiculous, but the average time that that's taken me to have them all as mentors is probably like 6 months. This is 6 months of kind of reaching out, going to events where they're going to be at. If you really want something, you essentially do it. If you really want to achieve something, you essentially put in the effort to actually make sure that you actually get it done. So, I would try and bump into them at events. I would send them messages on LinkedIn. I'll try and send them emails if I had their email. But I think when somebody sees your commitment to getting their attention, it gets their attention, because most people give up after the first email or the second message on LinkedIn. They will completely give up. But I think, having that patience to understand that these individuals are busy is the first requisite. But then second one, there needs to be a commitment from the mentee to essentially seek out mentorship, which sometimes can take months. And I think being able to accept that it will take time is such an important factor when it comes to finding the right mentor.
Yeah, definitely. And also having that sense of abundance, right? It's like, okay, well, this person, doesn't vibe with me, then there are others. The world is full of mentors waiting to have a mentee. Abundance. It's a beautiful thing.
There are 7.3 billion people on this earth. If one mentor isn't responding to you, you don't vibe, keep it moving.
Exactly. So Mills, before I ask you my final question, I would love to know, what are some rules or rituals or habits or mindsets that you have in your life that set you up for success?
I'd say for me, the number one thing that keeps me, number one, sane, number two, accountable, and keeps me going is, I think, for me, my faith. Spending a lot of time with kind of God, and I'm Christian, so spending a lot of time kind of praying and kind of reading the Bible, and getting closer to God, for me, keeps me really sane, because fundamentally I believe that everything I am doing, it belongs to God. I am ultimately only just a steward of the business that I have, or the family that I have, or the graces, or the anointings, or anything that I have. I'm only but a steward of that. So for me, first and foremost is my faith, and being solid and being grounded in my faith first of all. And then I would say some daily habits. I think I try my best to get up in the morning every day, and the first thing I would do is drink water. Drink probably like at least a liter of water in the morning, just to kind of reboot the system. It sounds very strange, but yes, I know it's very strange, but drinking a bit of water in the morning. And then I would exercise. I'd really exercise. I found actually that on the days that I don't exercise, when I get up in the morning, my days are completely different. I think if you can win the morning, you win the day, and it's such a true thing. It really is such a true thing. So for me, the three things I would say, I've mentioned two of them. The first one would be drinking that water in the morning, just to reboot the system. Number two, exercise. And then the third one is literature and just reading, being able to develop yourself. I believe that we're constant students of life, and we're the best way to grow a business, or the best way to grow anything, or to develop yourself personally, is to actually read. They say leaders are readers. And that's because they're always constantly exposed to so much different literature that supports them in how they grow personally and also in their businesses. So I'd say those three sit as fundamentals. Then some other things like the food, I mentioned, my turmeric tea, and I mentioned, my dark chocolate, which I have, and I mentioned some of my walnut herbs. So some of these other things, and what's this other one? This is coconut oils, just like some of the other, additional kind of life hacks and life things that just, add on to the usual routine. But these are all usually a factor of brain function, brain production more than anything. But I think those three sit as the fundamentals to what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, who is an entrepreneur if they don't have every brain food on Jim Quick's list? If you don't have that, are you even really an entrepreneur?
That should be the quiz, just say that. Yeah, like, really, that should really be the quiz. Like, if you don't have all of Jim Quick's brain food, then are you really an entrepreneur? Are you really serious about making it big?
Yeah, it's the next BuzzFeed quiz. Let's make it happen. Yeah, I think everything you're saying is really awesome. I found that the morning is everything. It really sets the whole tone for the day. And it makes total sense that you drink a liter of water in the morning, because you haven't drunk for many hours, and so your body is deprived of water. I've definitely found the same thing gives me that clarity. And talking of mentors, right? Reading books are mentors as well. Books can be mentors. Books are written by people where people have distilled decades of knowledge into a book, which is really awesome. And I think it's cool that you stay so connected to your faith. I think it's really cool how that can give you a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose and keep you humble. And I think that's really awesome. So thanks for sharing.
No, honestly, on the point around your day-to-day kind of habits and keeping that routine is so important. It sounds so mundane. It really does. Like doing the same thing over and over again. It sounds so mundane, but the key to hitting your goals and to getting to where you need to be is just consistency. and consistency means you're getting yourself into daily habits and daily routines, which then lead to your eventual success in whatever space you want to go into. If you're looking at entrepreneurship, or you're looking at, going into work for a corporate, or whatever it is you want to do, those daily habits make such a difference. They do, don't they?
They really, really do. And they allow you to harness the exponentially amazing power of the compound effect, where everything compounds over time exponentially, either in your favor or to your disbenefit, depending on the actions that you're taking, which is really awesome. So my final question for you, Mills, is what are 3 key truths about the entrepreneurial journey that you would share with the young entrepreneur today?
3 key truths. Oh, that is a very good question. You really got me thinking there, Yasmina, haven't you?
It always does.
3 key truths. The first one is preparing for failure. Is a truth that I think every young entrepreneur has got to come to terms with before doing anything. Preparing for failure, because you will fail. There will be things that you need to kind of iterate and go around. But I think having been resilient and being able to kind of overcome that, and understand, I think as you're going into entrepreneurship, that failure is normality. The best entrepreneurs will fail. The best entrepreneurs have failed several times in what they're doing. The other truth is, don't underestimate the power of mentorship. I know we've just spoken about mentorship, but do not underestimate the power of mentorship. Mentors are so important. They are pivotal. Again, remember that ideology. Remember that that thought that actually, if you go alone, you will go fast. But if you go together with a group of people who have that collective knowledge and understanding, you will absolutely go far. And then the third one is, it might be a bit of a different one, but it's like when you start a business, when you're looking to go into entrepreneurship, you're looking to raise funding. Like I shared earlier, you want to raise X, you see people raising millions and you think actually that's the route. Depending on your business, that might not be the route. And you might be better off getting a loan from the bank. You might be better off, bootstrapping it. You might be better off looking at other alternatives. Because I think the misconception or the misunderstanding sometimes, especially with entrepreneurs, is you have to raise. I was guilty of that. I thought, I got to find an investor who's going to give me 100 grand, and that 100 grand is going to solve all my problems. Depending on the business, sometimes that isn't the best route. But I'd say definitely those 3 would be my top 3 truths.
Really powerful stuff. And pivoting off the last one as well, I think it's so interesting, that rich versus king dilemma of the entrepreneur who wants control over their business, where it's like, okay, well then don't dilute your company by getting investor funding, and don't join a VC. Like if you want a lifestyle business, do not sign up with a VC, which is basically worse than a job because it's way more stressful. Right? Or do you want to be have the potential to be really, really, really rich? In which case, VC might be the way to go. Maybe it's angels. Maybe it's several different things. But I think it's very important to be informed about all your options.
100%. And I think different entrepreneurs have different objectives. Some people actually just want to build a business and have that as a lifestyle business. Others want to be exponential and build, a $1 billion tech company, or $1 billion lifestyle business, or $1 billion clothing brand. I think understanding where you fit into that is so important. I know nowadays, we can be pulled into this whole hustle culture of, you got to work, and you got to raise X and sell that and do this. Understand yourself and be self-aware. Be really self-aware about what you really want and where you need to really be. And I think once you understand that, you can then figure out what the best funding route is for you. Or in fact, you might not even need funding.
100%. Really powerful, Mills. So do you have anything that you'd like to plug? And where can people find you? Where can people find TapIn? Now is the time.
Yeah, I would just generally just say that, just thank you. First of all, I honor you. I honor you, Yasmina. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for inviting me here onto your podcast. I really do appreciate it. For those that are looking to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, Milimo Banji. On Instagram, Mills_10, and on Twitter as well, Mills_10. So if you want to connect with me and find out anything about my life and what I do, those are the 3 platforms that you can find me on.
Amazing. All right. All of that's going to go in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on, Mills. I honor you too. I had an absolute blast. It's been really fun.
I had fun. I've never had so much fun on the podcast, but thank you so much for making this so easy and so fun, Yasmina. Okay, thank you.
Hey, awesome. Anytime.